If I fail, if I succeed, at least I lived as I believe. No matter what they take from me, they can't take away my dignity, because the greatest love of all is happening to me. Learning to love yourself, it is the greatest love of all.
Well, I'm going to start off this morning with a really corny story, as usual. There was a young boy playing, and he was in playing, and his mom was listening to him, and he was talking to Andy. And she heard him say several times something to Andy. And she came in and wondered, because she didn't know that there was anybody there other than the young boy. So she went in and looked, and sure enough, she didn't see anybody but the young boy playing, talking to Andy. And she said, "Well, who is it you're talking to?" And the young boy said, "I'm talking to God." "Well, why are you calling God Andy?" "Mom, Andy walks with me, Andy talks with me." Well, I shared that story for a particular reason. I just came back from Conway, Arkansas, and spent the week with my mom, who made her transition this morning about 2:32 in the morning. And that was one of her favorite hymns. And so while I was there, I had the opportunity to hold her hand. My mom had had a stroke a few weeks back and was not able to really talk or communicate, but she was conscious from time to time, and we could tell that she was aware at different points. And so at one point I was there, and I was able to hold her hand, and at times I was talking to her, and sometimes she would acknowledge. You could tell she was getting something, and other times she was looking off into heaven. So I'm convinced that when we are in that place of transition, that part of the time we're here and part of the time we're already there. We're already on the other side. And so at different points, at one point I was singing some old hymns to her, which she loved, and one of them I was singing was that old hymn, "And he walks with me, and he talks with me," and I was holding her hand, and at one point she kind of kept the beat with the music, and I could hear her making sounds, and I could tell she was singing with me, you know. And so it was just very reassuring, I think, for me also, as well as I think for her, to know that she's always in that presence, always in the presence of the divine, always in the presence of love. And my mom was a very spiritual person, not necessarily religious, kind of like me, really, in some ways, but a very spiritual person. Just always had a wonderful understanding and connection that God was always there for her, and that she was, she knew that her view and her way of seeing things was that, and she shared this with myself and my brothers and sisters, is don't grieve for me, don't weep for me, because I'm going to a grand reunion, she called it. She always knew that she was going to a place where she was going to be greeted with love and care and compassion and grace. And I know that's true. I know that's true. Because we all live in that place, whether we're in this form now or whether we're not. And before I went away, I'd already planned out my lesson for the week because I wanted to talk about our core values, some of our core values here in Unity, and Unity in the heart of Austin. And one of our core values is to be loving. And so I wanted to really take some time to really reflect on and meditate what that means. What does it mean to be loving? You know, I think there are lots of different ways that love can be expressed, but I think it's important and valuable for us to recognize that even when love isn't expressed, it's always available. It's always present. That we are in and of the presence of love. That's what the divine is. In Scripture it tells us God is love, and they that abide in love abide in God. And so, interestingly enough, I'm convinced through much of my study and reading and meditation and prayer and times when I wasn't really feeling that regardless of whether I'm aware of love's presence, love is always present. And that's an important understanding, I think, in terms of our own spiritual unfolding, our own spiritual journey. We're always in that presence of love. We just don't remember it a lot of times. In fact, we're oftentimes fairly unconscious of it because we're so caught up in really the mind games, the games that the ego consciousness plays to try and sustain itself. And one of the things that stops the ego consciousness from sustaining itself is love. The moment that we move back into the consciousness and the energy of love, the ego really doesn't have an existence in a very real sense. It doesn't have anything to sustain itself. There's no energy that we can put into all of the judgments and the separation and the us and them. When that true energy of love, there's really just us, me, the one, the I am. And so when we practice, and it is a practice, don't get me wrong, because part of our work here really is, I'm convinced, to be in that consciousness and that energy of evolving love. In 1 Corinthians, in chapter 13, verse 13, it says, "And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love." So I'm really convinced that our primary work is to really practice being in that consciousness of love's presence. That's not always an easy thing, because it's really easy for us to look out here and say, well, that can't possibly be love. But what I'm kind of getting more recently is that thought is one of the things that the ego has to separate us from that consciousness that love is. It's just that monkey mind or ego voice, or our personality, you might say, that thinks it needs to be something other than or separate than. And there are practices that I'm really kind of getting some insight into more recently, again, you might say, of how we can really remind ourselves of being in that presence. Some of you may be aware that this last week also, one of my mentors and spiritual teachers, Louise Hay, made her transition. And Louise Hay has been, I think, one of the primary powerful teachers, not only in New Thought, but she's had impact throughout, I think, the world in some ways, of helping people to understand that the essence of what our work is self-love. The reality is we really can't tune into that energy and consciousness of love unless we are allowing ourselves to experience and to express love for ourselves. Now, some people say, well, that's selfishness, right? No, that's not selfishness. That is actually one of the most loving things you can do for this world, is love the person, the being, the essence, and yes, the personality, and believe it or not, even loving the ego that works through you. Because what we've learned, what I've learned, what I'm learning still perhaps, is that fighting the ego with the ego's tools is a losing game. You know what I'm talking about? Trying to fight the ego with the intellect, with the arguments, with the judgments, with the separation, feeds the ego. And so we don't release our ego consciousness, and we don't transform and we don't transcend our ego consciousness by trying to get rid of it. We transform it by one thing. The reality is we don't transform anything, but if we allow that love to be in our awareness and our consciousness, it's transformed. It's transformed back into love. There's no fuel for the ego consciousness to continue. And so our practice really is about reminding ourselves, one, that love is always present. And so Louise Hay was a powerful teacher in that respect. Let me read to you a little something from one of my absolutely favorite transformative works. How many of you have worked with this or read this work? Just a few. Wow, we got to do some work, kids. I'm telling you. It's called You Can Heal Your Life. How many of you would be interested in that? Would you actually be interested in healing your life? Would you like to have your life be filled with greater experiences of the possibilities that you are? She's got some amazing awarenesses and insights and tools in this work. Let me read to you something here that I just... This speaks to me on such a deep level. In the infinity of life where I am, all is perfect, whole, and complete. And yet life is ever changing. There is no beginning and no end. Only a constant cycling and recycling of substance and experiences. Life is never stuck or static or stale, for each moment is ever new and fresh. And I am one with the very power that created me. And this power has given me the power to create my own circumstances. And I rejoice in the knowledge that I have the power of my own mind to use it in any way that I choose. Every moment of life is a new beginning point as we move from the old. This moment is a new point of beginning for me right here and right now. All is well in my world. I'd like you to have you say this phrase with me. All is well in my world. All is well in my world. Now, I could be mistaken, but I would bet on some level there's a little voice inside that says, oh yeah? And I want you to take a second and say to that voice inside you that says, oh yeah? I want you to say, you deserve more love, not less. So let's say that out loud. You deserve more love, not less. Breathe that in a minute. This is a wonderful practice of reminding even that little niggling voice inside of who and what you are, of who and what we are. There's a wonderful book out called Teach Only Love, for that is what you are. It's based on the Course in Miracles, because that's the reality of our nature. And part of our work is to practice moving into that place where we change our own awareness and thinking and responses and inner dialogue to one that reflects that understanding that regardless of what we think is going on, love is here. So I want to go through a little exercise with you if you're open for it. So I want you to take a second and I want you to think about something that is challenging you in your life right now. And I want you to affirm these words with me. Love is here. Together? Love is here. Think about someone that really pushes your buttons. And I want you to say, love is here. Together? Love is here. See, this is a reminder. It's a reminder for us. It's a mantra that if we practice, we can recognize that there are things going on that are beyond our intellectual comprehension of what's going on. So think about a particular thought that you had that you maybe thought you probably shouldn't have had. And I want you to think about that little voice inside, and I want you to bless it and say, love is here. Together? Love is here. Think about that time where you were hurt. And just affirm and say, love is here. Together? Love is here. Love is here. Love is always here, even when we don't understand it and we don't recognize it, and even when we think that it's not. That's just a thought. It's a belief system. But the reality is that thought and that belief system doesn't change the reality that love is here. But if we practice that understanding in our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, that love is here, it's amazing how things begin to show up that look like that. You see, we're created in the image and after the likeness of love. We're created in the image and after the likeness of the very creative process itself. And therefore, we are in the process of creating. And one of the things that Louise Hay taught me many years ago, I had the great honor of meeting Louise Hay and hearing her speak at a Unity conference when I was in ministerial training. And I got real clear that that message of loving the self was one of the most valuable things that I would be able to do and teach and share in my ministry. Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that I'm always in a place where I'm able to love myself, because I got my own little game playing in my thoughts and feelings as well. And as I often have said, this is not about always being centered, it's about always returning to center. And sometimes I get these wonderful reminders that smack me right in the face of, oh yeah, remember, this is what you said you wanted to be about, And I get opportunities to remind myself that I'm here to not only remind you, but to remind me that love is always here. And that I am created in that creative process of love. And it takes a practice, I think, in terms of not only our thinking, but, one of the things that I'm getting is a wonderful work that I was introduced to by one of our guest speakers from a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Richard Massey, and he introduced me, and I think he mentioned it in his talk, about a wonderful book that he and his wife have been working with called Whatever Arises, Love That. Whatever arises, love that. The title itself is a gift of the divine, in my opinion. Whatever arises, love that. And what it really is working on, it is a love revolution. It's your own individual, personal love revolution. And I'm going to encourage you to really take some time to think about that, just that simple phrase. Whatever arises, love that. And so whatever arises in your thoughts and in your feelings and your emotions and your experiences, send love to it. That's the practice. And it's amazing when you begin doing that how things begin to transform. When you find yourself feeling angry about something, this is how I've part of the meditation of this. One of the mantras that he presents that really has been helpful for me is when I find myself not experiencing that energy of love, affirming and saying, I deserve more love, not less. I deserve more love, not less. So if you're feeling some discomfort or some pain or some upset or frustration or resentment or judgment, if that little voice is going on, you speak to that little voice and you say, I deserve more love, not less. Let's say that together. I deserve more love, not less. Say it again. I deserve more love, not less. And so when I am angry, I deserve more love, not less. Ever been angry? Anybody ever get angry?
No.
No! I deserve more love, not less. And when I've been with someone who has been angry lately, it's been really good for me to say not only I deserve more love, not less, but Roland deserves more love, not less. You deserve more love, not less. You deserve more love, not less. We all deserve more. We all deserve more love, not less. And it's amazing how just saying those words moves me back into that energy of love. And when you do that, you move back into the energy of love, it starves that little ego mind that's trying to say that everything else is, it's all everybody's problems, and, everybody else is doing this, and what about them, and, all of the stuff that the ego mind comes up with to keep us out of that energy of love. Because the ego doesn't know how to deal with the energy of love. Has no clue. Doesn't like it very much, for that matter. But that's okay. Our work is not to beat up on the ego. I deserve more love, not less. When you hear that little voice going with all that stuff, I deserve more love, not less. As my mom has been making her transition, this has been a wonderful mantra for me. It's been really wonderful for me to really hold that thought for my mom as well. When I thought maybe there was at one point, a little fear or anxiety that she might have been experiencing. I don't really think she had a lot, because I think she had pretty much made peace, and I think she had a lot of strong faith. But, this is not an easy process. But I was able to hold that energy, that thought for myself and for her, that we deserve more love, not less. And I'm convinced that she's really moving into that energy and that consciousness even more, that feeling of being loved even more. She passed peacefully, surrounded by people who love her very much. They're going to miss her very much, of course. And we are going to grieve. We're going to cry. And when we do, we're going to know that we deserve more love, not less. I was there and a bit torn, because I know that there's a lot of pain and suffering that's going on in our neighbors down in Houston and along the coast and Beaumont. And my heart has really gone out to all of those who are feeling the energy of loss, the fear, the uncertainty, the not knowing what's next. And I've been praying and saying, you deserve more love, not less. You deserve more love, not less. And holding all of them in that thought, that awareness, that consciousness, and knowing, even in the feelings of sadness and grief that I feel for all those who are experiencing that suffering, that fear, that love is there. You could see love there. You see people responding in love. You see people doing things that are beyond their normal way of thinking and being and doing. And I think we're all called on some level to listen to how we can express love, either in a physical way. Now, I don't have a boat that I could take down there. I was really thinking, well, I'm going to go get a boat, but it wasn't mine to do. In all honesty, mine was to be with my mom. But my heart was sending them all kinds of wonderful thoughts, and I want us to really hold an energy and a consciousness of love for all those who may be suffering, not only in Houston or down on the Gulf Coast, but even throughout our world. The more we practice that understanding that we all deserve more love and not less, we become more instruments of that love. Just the very act of holding that thought is a loving energy, a loving consciousness, a loving power. We deserve more love, not less. I do believe that this is a big piece of the first and the second commandment. In Matthew 5:43, ye have heard that it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you. And pray for them that despitefully use you and persecute you. Now, I want to say a little bit about that. We, over the years, perhaps centuries, have thought about that as being the enemy out there. And I'm going to suggest to you that that's not really what I think Jesus was really referring to. I think he was referring to our own adversarial thinking, our own inner negative dialogue. Because the reality is all of the stuff that we see and experience out here is just a reflection of what's going on in here. And if we learn, he says, for if you love them which love you, what reward have you? Do not even the publicans do the same? And Jesus said unto them, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. Now notice he's not talking about something out there. He's talking about something in here. And our work, I think, is to really send love to those places in us where we have not felt love, or we have not expressed love, even for that matter. And if we can send love to even those parts of ourselves, it's kind of like, in a very real sense, we all have within us very immature thinking. You might say that's our child within. We all have a little child within us that is still stuck in certain levels of immature awareness, immature thought, childlike ways of thinking and experiencing. And so in a very real sense, there's an energy and a consciousness of a child within us. And that child is always crying to experience more of that love. And one of the ways that the child does that is that it acts out in ways that we consider to be childish, immature, judgmental, frustrated, crying. And we don't judge and condemn a child that's crying like that, do we? That's simply saying, I'm hurt. I need to be loved. I need to experience love. There's not one of us in this world that isn't experiencing that in some way, in some level, even if we're not even conscious of it. But every now and then that little energy, that voice comes back and comes up. And our work is to love that child. To love that child back into wholeness. Not beat it up and say how wrong it is and say you shouldn't think that way and you shouldn't feel that, but just simply to know you deserve more love, not less. Think about that little child inside of you right now. Some of you are probably feeling it a little bit right now, and that's okay. Just notice the feeling. And whatever arises, love that. You deserve more love, not less. I deserve more love, not less. We deserve more love, not less. One of our core values that we express here at Unity in the Heart of Austin is the energy of loving. The definition that we came up with for that is we express unconditional love and see the good everywhere and in everyone, including ourselves. And so when you look out in the world and you find those that kind of push your buttons or trigger you, or as Pippa Chodron says, causes you to bite the hook, we get hooked into their dramas or their personality or ways that they are crying out for love, as A Course in Miracles says. Our work is to be the one that holds that awareness of love. We're not there to make them wrong. We're there to love them. And in the very act of doing that, we are transformed and so are they. And so that loving does include others that we have trouble with, but it also includes ourselves for having trouble with them. Right? And so we say to that part of ourselves that really gets our button pushed about someone who pushes our buttons, you deserve more love, not less. So here's some community behaviors that we've agreed on. One, we warmly welcome and greet everyone with love who enters our sanctuary. We are present to each other with complete acceptance, looking beyond appearances and differences. We initiate conversation and connect with newcomers and inviting their involvement in our community. And we honor all people as part of God's love and beauty express. All people as a part of God's love and beauty express. Especially, I think, in some ways, those that push our buttons. Because they're our teachers. They're there to show us our way of love. And individual behaviors. I continually seek to expand loving relationships in my world. I am considerate of others and listen with empathy. I love myself completely, as Spirit does, and express my divine wholeness. And I practice forgiveness of myself and others. I think these are valuable core principles and behaviors that really help us to move to a whole nother level. You see, we're in a time here, and when we talk about our spiritual growth as individuals, we're in a time of awakening. But as we collectively evolve and grow and learn, we're not just in a time of awakening, we're in a time of enlightenment. And so we're being called to come to a different level in life. The circumstances, the situations, the challenges that come into our experiences are there to help us move to that different level. And if we take the attitude and the understanding that love is the essence of what will move us there, and are willing to take the time to practice that way of understanding, you'll be amazed at how those difficulties and challenges become transformed into a gift. I'm going to read to you from the poems of Hafiz, and this one is called The Seed Cracked Open. It used to be that when I would awake in the morning, I could with confidence say, "What am I going to do?" That was before the seed cracked open. Now Hafiz is certain. There are two of us housed in this body, doing the shopping together in the market and tickling each other while fixing the evening's food. And now, when I awake, all the internal instruments play the same music. God, what love mischief can we do for the world today? I love that phrase. So I invite you, as our lesson this week is, to get into some love mischief. What love mischief can we get into today? Let's move into our meditation time. So I invite you to take a nice deep breath. Breathe into the heart space. And as you breathe into the heart space, quietly, gently, lovingly, affirm and know that love is here. Love is here. I am in and of and as the presence of love. Just know this truth for yourself. There can be nothing other, because that is what the divine is. And so, if any thoughts arise, just notice them. And just affirm gently, I deserve more love, not less. And just say that silently to yourself. Let this be your mantra, not only in this meditation time, but just think about the week ahead. I know there are opportunities, there are challenges, there are gifts, perhaps there are struggles. And as you think about those, just send out that awareness, that energy of knowing that love is here, that love is there. I deserve more love, not less. Just allow yourself to feel and receive that feeling, that energy, that consciousness that love is. And just bless those as you go forward into your week that you maybe encounter. Those that you are aware of and those that you don't know of yet. Just bless them with this knowing. You deserve more love, not less. You deserve more love, not less. And as you come together, just know, as you are together, that we deserve more love, not less. And breathe into that heart space and let yourself be a vessel of that love emanating in just the right and perfect way for all involved, all that are in your awareness, in your consciousness, all that are drawn to you and that you're drawn to. And just trust and know that that love is at work to transcend, to uplift, to heal, to bless, to comfort. We deserve more love, and love is here. And just let a feeling of gratitude come in your heart, knowing that that love is here and available, and nothing that our ego consciousness tries to convince us of can change that. And just say to that adversarial voice, you also deserve more love, not less. And love is here. Take a nice deep breath now. Breathe that awareness, that energy, that consciousness of love. And know that that work is being done. Take another nice deep breath. Be open to allowing yourself to be that instrument of divine love. Being guided in just the right and perfect way to express that. And take another nice deep breath and gently open your eyes. Being present in love, here and now. And know that all is well. And so it is.